There sat a pond encircled by tall willow trees. Moss hung from them, and they filtered the soft rays of light which fell from the moon. Often the night was enchanted by the glow of fireflies, the steady rhythm of frogs and toads croaking, and the hum of crickets chirping. Tonight there sat a toad on the edge of his burrow. He stared at the flashing fireflies as they flew just above the pond's surface. He hungered for them and wanted to know what they taste like. Then he glanced at the towering trees. He knew there was a winged one in there somewhere, a foul beast with large white wings, beady black eyes, and a long yellow beak. The toad thought of the first and only time he encountered the winged one. A few weeks ago, on a brisk night, a white beast swooped down from the trees and pierced the ground with its daunting beak. Had the toad not hopped to the left when he did, he surely would have perished. His burrow was only a few inches away, and he dove into it on that night. There he learned to fear the winged ones. The toad knew better now. He knew of the winged ones and also the scaly ones and the slippery ones. And presently, at the edge of the burrow, he sits, waiting for his dinner to come to him. Pinpricks of green light bloom into existence, fireflies fluttering about, wrapped in their green glow. The buzz of flies washes over the toad as they hover out of reach. Most of the insects know where the toad is and keep their distance. Most of them. The toad hadn't changed his spot in some time, nor had he moved. The burrow he dug was his home, a place of refuge and also a prison. The flies seemed to know this, and because of that, they stayed away. They knew the toad sat in the same spot at the same time every night. Unfortunately for him, this made feeding difficult, but fortunately for him, this made him predictable and easy to find. A friend of his, a slippery old frog, visited every night, and this night would be no different. His friend was coming to say hello. As the toad sat, the frog swam from across the pond and climbed out of the water. Its skin was green and dotted with brown spots. The frog studied the toad and then hopped out of the cool pond into the sandy mud. The toad, rather introverted if one could say that, backed into its burrow made of sand and mud until only his nostrils protruded from its opening. As leaves fell from on high and rays of the moon danced upon the forest floor, the frog drew closer to his friend. Hopping over the leaves and twigs, through mud and sand, the frog made his way to the toad's burrow. Once there, the frog slunk low and peered into the burrow, and there he saw only the toad's bulbous eyes and nose. Everything else was consumed by shadow. The scent of mud and his dear friend thrilled his senses as the frog's heart filled with joy and hope. The frog croaked, "Is tonight the night you will leave your burrow and venture with me? Shall we swim together and sit atop the lily pads? The burrow is your home, and I do not ask you to abandon it, only to join me in friendship, even if for only a moment." The toad said, "I will not, for I know the winged ones are watching from above. I know the slippery ones swim beneath the water's surface. I know the scaly ones slither between the rocks and under the leaves." The toad shuddered as he continued, "But I fear the winged ones most of all, because their beady eyes will follow me across the pond, across the lily pads, and when I am not looking, they will spear me with their beak. What a wretched animal to have a beak shaped like a dagger. Worst of all, my dear cousin, is that I will not hear it swoop from above. How dreadful is that? The frog responded, "Ah, Cousin Toad, I have met many others like you who do not have such worries. I even have a friend who has lived for 5 winters. He has told me that he lives beneath the leaves when he needs to, in a burrow during the winter when he must, and at times sits in the pond among the moss and lily pads." The frog hopped a bit closer. He croaked with excitement. "Join him, Cousin Toad. No, join us, won't you? Free yourself from your imprisonment. Come out at once. Come before the winter gropes this pond and the water turns to ice. Come now, join me, Cousin Toad." The frog turned away, prepared to return to the pond. The toad shuffled deeper into its burrow, receding into the complete shadow. From the darkness croaked the toad. He said, "Foolish of your supposed friend to hide where the scaly ones dwell. What sort of toad would pass along such ill advice? How could I hide beneath the leaves and not become breakfast for the scaly ones? How could I not swim in the pond and become lunch for the slippery ones? And lastly, I beg to know, how could I traverse the pond and not become dinner for the dreadful winged ones?" The toad and frog sat in absolute silence, save for the hum and buzz of other insects milling about. The frog looked into the toad's shadowy burrow and felt pity for him. From the burrow's depths, the toad croaked, "I saw the winged ones emerged from the shadows like lightning and strike down not only toads, but frogs, and the slippery and scaly ones too. Do you not understand that you gamble with your life when you venture beyond the safety of sand and mud, tunnels and security?" The toad turned around in his burrow as he quietly croaked, "Begone, pest, and speak no more of this supposed toad that can somehow cheat death when he sleeps, because surely he must sleep, or is he so cunning and wise that even in slumber he escapes death?" The frog responded, "Cousin Toad, he hides beneath the leaves when he must sleep, or perhaps he creates a shallow burrow only for that night. All I know is that I have met many toads, and most have perished, yet he is among those who lives. I only fear for you, is all. I have watched you since you were a toadlet, and I know the joy you are missing. There are others like you. Would you at least consider fighting the grip fear has on you and maybe just set foot out of your burrow? You surely cannot live for long in such a way." The toad turned in its burrow, and with that, the profile of its face emerged from the shadows. His stare was cold, and he drew a hard squint. He croaked, "What is it to you, frog? Why do you pester me?" The frog hopped closer and replied, "I remember. When I was like you, I was afraid. Walk with me through a memory which still haunts my dreams. Before my lungs and legs had developed, I swam with the slippery ones, my brothers, sisters. I watched them swim beside me, and those who hid were easy morsels. The slippery ones dared not chase those who swam, because it was too easy to feast on those who thought they were hidden in the mud. When my legs grew and I saw the beautiful sky for the first time, I knew that peace and safety was not found hidden within the mud or under a leaf or digging a burrow to hide from predators. To spend your existence doing such things is to waste your life. Be not a toad who hides in the mud, and join me on the lily pads, if only for a second. The toad was silent for a moment as he thought about the frog's words. He croaked, "Frogs, frogs! Arrogant and blind they are. I too have seen the leaves fall and felt the cool breath of autumn. You are a sly one, aren't you? You wish for me to abandon my burrow so that you can claim it for yourself. Is that your goal? Seek refuge in my burrow before the winter comes, lest you freeze in the pond." The toad straightened himself and faced the frog. He hopped closer as he croaked, "Do you not understand that I dig many holes, many tunnels, and that here I could survive for 100 years? Nothing will find me here. Nothing." The frog responded, "Cousin, yes, you could live, if one could call it that, in that burrow for 100 years, and not once would you see the stars or feel the summer breeze. Deeper into this pit you will go. Look at it. It is a tomb crafted in the spirit of fear. Release yourself from its terrible grip and come with me to the pond." The toad croaked, "I may not feel those things or see them, but I will also not be seen or spread my scent across the pond. Therefore, if nothing sees or smells me, how could they find my burrow and ambush me? Therefore, I cannot join you, my dear cousin, because it is here that I am safe. I know the winged ones stalk the pond from the canopies." The toad crawled closer, his eyes still squinting with frustration and anger. The toad croaked once more, "Frog, do you not understand? It is not just them. There are creatures which can turn their heads around, and their eyes are ever bulging. When they swoop, they are silent. They are the silent ones who descend from the shadows between the trees, and they will take me into the blackest parts of the night. Cousin Frog, I do not know what the silent ones would do to me, because they feed under the cloak of shadow. I ask, how can I defend myself against something I cannot hear nor see? I would much rather live deep in my burrow. There I know I am safe." The frog said, "No creature is safe from the world just because they hide. The world does not stop its turning just because you bury your face in the sand and mud. Come to sense and understand reason. As you turn your back to the world, the tall two-legged ones, the eight-legged ones, and the scaly ones, all of them are preparing to strike. Cast off the shackles which bind you and no longer live in fear." Hopping closer to the frog, the toad pushed against him with his nose. In response to this, the frog hopped a few paces back. The toad croaked, "And where will I be, cousin? Should I sit upon a rock and count my minutes? hide under a leaf and count my hours? Perhaps I should lay upon my back so that the winged ones can feast on my gizzards all the sooner. I grow angry for repeating myself over and over. Be gone with this nonsense, for now I am certain you wish only death upon me. The frog's stare softened as he pleaded, Cousin Toad, how do you not understand that the threads of fate already bind you, and it is not for you to decide when they take you? I ask, no, I beg for the last time, please come out of your burrow only for a moment and gaze at the heavenly moon and stars. With this, the toad crawled out of the sand and mud burrow. Fireflies illuminated the area above the still water with a green glow, while others danced above the water's surface. Sheets of silver moonlight revealed the grass, sticks, and dead leaves which littered the forest floor and stood between the toad and the frog and the pond before them. The frog turned so that it stood beside the toad, and he said, Look, look, look at the heavenly night, at the stars, at the moon. Behold the beautiful glow of the fireflies, and listen to the symphony of the willow trees. Is it not so grand? Does it not fill your heart with joy? The toad turned its head and looked to his left. He looked to his right, and then he looked forward at the pond. He wondered again what the fireflies tasted like, how it would feel to sit upon a lily pad floating in the water, and if sleeping beneath a leaf would be pleasant. And then he remembered the winged ones. He croaked, This does not impress me. The frog's heart swelled with worry as he hopped toward the edge of the pond, where the water lapped atop the mud and sand. He turned and faced the toad. The frog said, Cousin, you have dug for yourself a deep chasm, and there you may find your end. I will return to my lily pad, and tonight I will mourn your death. The frog turned away from his friend because now the fear and worry had become too much to bear. He continued, I believe the reason why my other toad friend is still alive is because he has learned how to avoid the predators, because he understands that they are ever present. The threats you fear will not go away just because you cower and hide. Someday, something will find you, and your burrow will become the prison from which you cannot escape. The toad slunk deeper into his burrow. He did not know why, but he felt abandoned as his dear friend stood at the water's edge. He wanted to go with him, to sit atop the lily pads, eat the fireflies, and set his feet in the water, but then he remembered the winged ones, the scaly ones, the silent ones. He looked beyond his friend and at the trees. As he stared, he knew they also stared at him. Their eyes. He could not see them, but he knew they focused on him. He returned his gaze to the frog, and his heart boiled with anger, rage, sadness disguised as contempt. The toad croaked. Frogs, frogs, curse them, no, curse you. You lie. You tell me lies because you are lonely. Do you desire company? Is that why you are here? Is that why you come to speak of misfortune? I will live out my days in my burrow, where I know that I am safe. You will surely perish before the fingers of winter touches us all. The toad crawled deeper into its burrow until it receded completely into shadow, and once there, he croaked, I am happy alone. I do not desire company and find joy in the solitude I have made. Go away, frog, because you are no friend of mine. Because no friend of mine would demand that I change so much of myself. I will live a long life, longer than yours, because I will be safe in my burrow. Go away. Please go away and do not return until the spring. I am furious with you. If frogs could weep, the frog surely would have wept. He sat at the water's edge, staring longingly at his toad cousin, desperate for his company to share with him the joy he had found in friendship. But alas, all things had been dashed by what the toad believed to be true. The frog hopped into the water and bid his farewell and said his last goodbye for the season. He said, I would rather perish soon than live a life locked in the prison of my mind. What you have described is not life, nor is it living. You are already among the dead, and soon you may join them. This is why I will weep for you tonight. What you have created will not yield happiness or joy or even freedom. You are a slave to your own imagination and the fear it stirs. Should I perish before the winter, that is fine. At least I will know that I have lived. If I do not, I will return to you in the spring per your request. And I will ask you to join me once again upon the lily pads. I hope a long sleep will revive your decaying spirit and fill you with adventure and wonder. Until that day, I say goodbye and know that I will say good things about you until we meet again. Therefore, I say goodbye, Cousin Toad. The frog turned away from the toad and dove into the water. The toad emerged from its burrow and scanned the water's surface. Where his friend swam to, he did not know. He glanced at the lily pads and fireflies once again and felt something worse than hunger. Now, he knew what it felt like to lose a friend. The toad scanned the shoreline of the pond and then the flies. He searched for the frog but found little else than darkness. As his focus fell upon the whispering willows, he thought he saw the flash of a yellow beak, of a winged one. He returned to his burrow and stood at its edge. The trees, shrubs, and shimmering moonlight stirred his heart, but once again he thought of them. He remembered them, the winged one. Scooting back into his home, the toad disappeared into the shadow of his burrow, and there he would remain until spring. The winter had come and passed, and now the spring was upon the forest. Cold gales swept through the branches of trees and long dead shrubs. The snow had melted by now, and the earth was naturally muddy. As for the pond, the ice had melted, but the water was still cold. The frog climbed out of the icy pond and traversed the brisk surface of the sticky mud and sand as he approached the toad's burrow. Staring into the burrow's hole, he croaked. The hole was deep and spiraled downward into the darkness. What was down there, he could not see. He croaked once more, if only to catch the toad's attention, but it was for naught. The only sound he heard was the sudden shifting of sand and mud, the sound of a snake emerging from the burrow. The frog hopped away then, in fear of the scaly one, and mourned the horrible demise of his friend, because he had hoped that perhaps this summer he would leave his burrow and join him on the lily pads.